On today's episode of Heavy the Podcast, Mike and I talk about what we believe makes up a good frontman. So settle on down and then settle on up, because it's time to get heavy! Michael Vespo, what's up, bro? Like, it's the first time we've ever tried a live intro. By the way, I gotta give you a little context here. I'm sitting in a sauna because it's the only quiet area in the gym. And I bet you everybody in the gym is just like, what is happening in the sauna right now? So yeah, I didn't give any warning that I was going to be doing a live intro, but we wanted to include some video for you guys so you can finally see our smiling faces. How are you doing, bro?
Well, first off, I think you nailed that live intro, so you should give yourself all the credit. I'm doing good, man. I feel like between Christmas and the New Year until now, like it's the last like couple of weeks have just been a mash of days, but you know, we're here doing our favorite thing, which is Heavy the Podcast. I'm excited to catch up on homework from last week and then dive into our topic today, because I think you and I are going to have very different views of what makes a frontman, and I'm excited about that.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I was actually a little surprised at how I had to approach this week's topic, because I had to start veering away from what I would normally do, is just and think of individual frontmen that I like, you know, individual people. And I was like, oh, well, hold on a sec. I don't necessarily have to choose a band or a singer or anything like that, but what are some things that really just draw me to one person? And I think there's two ways to look at it. First of all, we could look at who's a great frontman by themselves, and some of them have individual projects where it's just them, or kind of, does that make sense? Like Dio, you know, like Ronnie James. Yep. Dio is, you know, it's Dio, it's him, it's Ronnie James Dio, you know, versus like if you have a great frontman for a band like Rage Against the Machine, for example. Like, now, while Zach is a great frontman for that band, the band, I think, as a whole, is this idea that represents, you know, a bunch of other ideas, and he's just the one that's pushing those things out there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense, because I was the same way when I first started thinking about this. Just like you said, the first thing that started popping into my mind was like the individuals that stuck out to me as what I thought of as great front persons for a band. But then the more I thought about it, like our topic today is about what we believe makes that person. So I think it'll be a lot more fun, because when I was thinking about my list, instead I started thinking about attributes that I think make a great front person. And
right.
Like just exactly what you said, like somebody like Rage Against the Machine, you can visualize who he is, but there's so much more to what he did as a front person, and then in turn them as a band, that really made him a very iconic front person, from the way he sounded to the way he looked to the statements that he, you know, helped drive the band to deliver home. So I think it'll be cool to see, I think, what we choose to refer to as great attributes and great people that have, you know, graced the stage and or the music industry together.
Absolutely. For sure, man. Before we jump into that topic, let's go ahead and recap our homework for last week. Now, I'll go ahead and start, just because the homework you gave me precedes the homework I gave you. So I think it's kind of only fitting to go in that order. So you gave me the album Fortress by Protest the Hero. And I think that's actually a really fitting thing that our homework was that from last week, especially leading into today's topic, because Protest the Hero is a prog band. For those of you guys that haven't heard them, they're a prog band from Canada. And from early on when they first started, I think it was really apparent that they were going to do some really special things. And many reasons for that, or one of the main reasons for that, is their singer, Rhodey Walker. He gives the band a very unique sound, and while you could take a band like Protest the Hero and put harsh vocals on there or just clean vocals on there, and it would sound very, I think it would sound very strange and uninteresting unless you also had this guy who kind of is playful and has a sense of humor. You know what I'm saying? So
totally.
The band and the sound is the way it is in my opinion, because of Roadie. So, Fortress is one of my favorite albums by them. I'm always excited when they release new music, and one of my favorite songs from that album is one that I don't think got as many spins as the other many of the other songs, like Sequoia Throne or like Blood Meat, and the song is Bone Marrow. Bone Marrow so much is because it really allows the band to show off by kind of switching it up, switching the song up in a couple different ways. It seems like they kind of switch, I don't want to say cadence, but like vibe a couple times throughout the song. And Roadie is able to really show his voice off, not just in the way that he delivers his vocals, but also in kind of like choices that he makes that are creative that I don't think many other singers would choose, you know? Like, the lyrics are, they tell a story, he's painting a picture, but at the same time, too, he's still able to put little flares in his vocal performance that kind of show off in the sense, and I'll get into this a little bit when we're talking about what makes up a good frontman, but in ways that other singers simply can't do, you know, like they physically can't do it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we'll talk more about that later on, but I just really wanted to highlight that song because I thought it was special, and I don't think enough people listen to it, you know?
No, and I think that you're right. I think what's interesting, and like you said, we'll peel this back more as we talk about this, but I think that even exactly what you're saying, like even though they as a band, you know, have a very unique sound, a huge part of that unique sound is kind of the vocal signature of the way that he conducts himself. And I think that even though their music is very big, it's very specific to them, it wouldn't be Protest the Hero without the style of vocals that he has, and also just kind of like you said, that the flair, the tone, the kind of the way he ebbs and flows between his different styles of vocals and everything. So I think that's a great point. And I think that for a lot of people, probably what draws them and keeps them listening to Protest the Hero has a lot to do with that unique vocal style that he does have. Which, you know, for my homework, you know, leads me to mine, which, you know, when I knew I was going to give you this homework, you know, for me, that came from a place because I just love that album, because I think that Protest the Hero is a very unique band in the way. And so for me, you had given me, and you can tell me if I'm pronouncing the album wrong, but it's Palimpsest.
I just say palimpsest, but I could be wrong. I'm not sure. Yeah.
So this is their album release from 2020. And you know, from start to finish, it was a CD that, or I should say an album that every song I was very surprised by. You know, usually when you collectively listen to an album, you have sections of the album that you're like, yeah, I like these songs. I like the way these couple songs flow together. I feel like kind of like a filler. These are filler songs in the middle, and then they try to end with something big. But I thought from beginning to end, and I think this is something that's unique to them, just as in the way that they write, is that I felt like this, like other great bands who put out very rememberable and iconic albums, from start to finish, I felt like every single song had a direct piece to play in the collection of the album. And my favorite song off the album was, and I'm picking a song that, again, is hard to pronounce, is Soliloquy or Quay. But what I liked about the song is that I thought that if I were to tell someone... if I were to describe Protest the Hero in a song, it felt like a song off the album, which was easy to explain. It's like when people, they're like, post what your day has been like using memes only. Like, I feel like if I were to say, hey, this is a song that makes Protest the Hero unique, it'd be that song. And I think just, not because there's anything fantastic about the song, but it just like through and through, it was like, you were like biting to the core of what the genre and the style in which they write.
You can reach for your service pistol. By the time you get it, I'm betting that this will be over and done with. If you're betting your gun, you won't be coming home tonight, because you're dealing with a man at the end of his rope, and I'll be swinging for the fences on a prayer and a hope. There'll be no celebrations, no banner libations, just a sad and lonely wife. You want the glory, respect and care. You want the story of the ill-fated blood you spill, 'cause there's a Midwest overcoat, and it's begging to be filled. And if I'm not gonna wear it, you will. You'll have to do better than that. You'll have to do better than that, 'cause it passed right through the abdomen of this same old lucky cat. Yeah, you'll have to do better than that. Fuck it.
That did. And honestly, I had a lot more fun listening to this album than I thought I was going to, being as that Protest Hero is a really great band, but they're not like my top 5.
Yeah.
I actually had a lot of fun listening to this album.
Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons I always look forward to music that they drop. And, it's funny because now that I think back, I'm like, they should be in my top 5. They're amazing, like Protest the Hero to me is one of those bands where I am constant, like, and again, I don't know their financial situation or anything like that, but they're the type of musicians where they're so good at what they do, like at every instrument, even the production, the storytelling, the lyrics, like all that stuff is so exceptional. I'm always just like, these guys should be millionaires. Like everybody should know their name. Like I'm always so, I want them to win so bad. I'm just so happy that they exist and they're continuing to make music. Interesting story about them. I don't know if you heard about the Kickstarter thing a couple years ago. They were basically dropped by their label and they were considering breaking up or whatever. I'm a little foggy on the details, but from what I understand, they were one of the first bands ever to, I think it was either Indiegogo or Kickstarter. They started a GoFundMe campaign, and they had a goal of like, I don't know, it was like 20,000 or something like that. I can't remember exactly the goal, but they have such a loyal fan base. They surpassed their goal, I think, within an hour, and like it was like they surpassed it by like 5 or 6 times. I can't remember the exact numbers, but it was a remarkable GoFundMe campaign and one of the first that bands had done. So these guys are paving the way. They're also one of the first to do the whole buy the album in advance. We'll give you advanced material like a documentary or something. Lots of bands are doing that now, but they were first in the pool. So yeah.
And I think what's really cool about that is that, and that's kind of almost like a perfect story for us talking about, what it takes to be a front man or a front person, or I should say an iconic front man or front person, is that, a lot of the times it's the fan base that obviously decides the success of the band, but I think that just only speaks more volumes to just how electric they are as a band and how, contagious just the fun that they're having with their music is to show that like you literally have an album that is supported and or created like purely by the fans, which I think, we've talked about this before in previous episodes, what we're seeing with the future of the music, not in just any specific genre, as we're seeing a lot of artists and artistry totally go to self-funded or fan-funded studio recording, things like that. So I think it's a really cool story, and it's super fitting for our topic today, which is awesome.
Absolutely. All right. Speaking of our topic today, let's go ahead and just jump right in, man. So I was a little foggy when you first brought this up, but the topic is, what are at least 3 traits that we feel need to be present in our ideal frontman, Freudian slip there. And we can use various examples for this, but I really, once I kind of got the gist of what you were asking me to figure out, it really became a fun kind of assignment, So what is your first trait?
Well, before I get there, I think too, I think that what's really fun about this is that, we're going to have names of people that we can use as examples. And I think that'll be really fun to do. But it's also fun to see that like a lot of these traits aren't specific to any one genre of music. Like a lot of these things are truly, what makes people be engaged with music a lot of times is just, who are the people involved in the group, the band, and whatnot. So
and also before you jump in, I do want to say too, at least for my list, I don't know, you could tell me if it's a little different for you, but I can't think of one frontman, maybe a couple, I don't know, that have all 3 of these traits. But It's like for this specific band, this is the thing that draws me in. Does that make sense?
Makes total sense, and I think that's also too. I think what makes the difference between, a band where you think about the band as a whole, like when we think, we've been talking about Metallica on and off lately, even though James is the front person, when you visualize Metallica, you can visualize the whole band because they've become iconic as a band, where there's other people who, I think of I think of how many people could probably tell me all the names of the members of Guns N' Roses. Like, you're probably going to tell me Axl Rose, you're going to tell me Slash, because those are visually people that you gravitate towards. But no, so when I was thinking about this, obviously like you, I started thinking about people, and then I started asking myself, okay, well, what about these people in these bands or groups made them iconic or made them really be great front people for their band? And, there was... we could have done a list of 10 different things. But the first thing that really stood out to me was, and you'll probably laugh a little bit about this, but there's something about being just overly emotional and maybe even coming across as slightly emotionally unstable that makes a front person really, really unique. So when I thought about this, I thought about like people like a Chester from from Linkin Park. I thought about a Matt Shadow from Avenged Sevenfold, like people who were maybe it wasn't even specifically their music, but there was pieces of what they brought to the stage. And so when I think about first like that overly emotional, I've been lucky enough as that I'm a little bit older that I've had the chance to see Linkin Park play. And one thing that I think always was interesting about Chester and the way that he was a front person, and there's a lot of other people that do this, is just that you could tell that like from head to toe the music just flowed through them. When a song had a certain tone or mentality or emotion to it, not only could you hear that, but you felt that coming from the person. So I think one of the first things as a front person is that you have to be able to convey the emotions of the music as much through yourself as you do through the dynamic of the song.
Right in front of you. Every step that I take is another mistake to you. And
musicians. So we've talked about them in the past. They're a 3-piece band, which makes it a little bit harder for them. To, you know, have that really emotional thing because they're tied to the instruments as much as they're tied to the stage performance. Where again, you look at like a band like Slipknot, and you know, that overly emotional presence really connects you to the music, and kind of almost like it's like if I read you a bedtime story versus Morgan Freeman reading you a bedtime story. Like there's just a deeper emotion that's grabbed by that. And so I think that's one of the first qualities to me that really draws me specifically towards a great front person, is just that they're able to convey such emotion and almost kind of emotional instability kind of in the way they express them, as if like the music kind of unshackles them from things, and there's no ceiling to how they express themselves when they play their music. So that was kind of the first thing that really stood out to me is you need someone who's able to be very emotional and convey that emotion through their music.
I couldn't agree more. And, you know, normally when we do the show, I have kind of my list, right? And I tend to go down in order of like, okay, I'm going to talk about this. You're going to talk about that. Doesn't really matter. We're going to talk about this. And every now and then the conversation just kind of takes a left turn. And I'm like, this really fits here. So I think I'm actually going to switch up the order of the things I was going to talk about because what you just mentioned really fits in with one of my traits. And that trait is believability. So it's kind of what you're talking about as far as like being able to emote and, you know, communicate the vibe of the song and the emotion with the song. And I think I'm going to take it a step further with believability, meaning like what they're saying they believe, you know,
right.
Whether they're telling a story, even if it's joking, you know, like it feels like it's coming from this person because they either embody what they're talking about or they believe what they're talking about a ton. A couple really good examples would be like System of a Down, for example. System of a Down, Serj Tankian, you know, him and the rest of the band are so ingrained in the Armenian community. The Armenian culture is such a huge part of their music. The things that they sing about, you can tell they believe it. They live it. They've had relatives that lived through the Armenian genocide, all of that stuff. And so it's like when I hear a song about that from them, I'm not sitting here just being like, yeah, these lyrics are kind of fluff. You know what I'm saying? Like, not at all. And if you watch one of their shows, there's a weird, serene, I don't even want to say serene. It's a presence that comes into the arena, the stadium, whatever it is, when they start playing these songs, which are basically mourning, you know? They're mourning the deaths of millions of people, you know?
Life is a waterfall. We're one in the river and one again after the fall. Swimming through the void, we hear the word. We lose ourselves, but we find it all. 'Cause we are the ones that wanna play. Always wanna go, but you never wanna stay. And we are the ones that wanna choose. Always wanna play, but you never wanna lose. Aerials in the sky. When you lose small mind, you free your life.
And that's something that would not be, they wouldn't be able to accomplish that task unless Serj was a convincing frontman, you know? Another great example we mentioned before was Rage Against the Machine, you know? And it's kind of the same thing. If we didn't believe Zach De La Rocha believed what he was talking about, then it wouldn't have an impact. You know, it wouldn't mean anything. The music videos wouldn't mean anything unless they were really passionate about it. You know, and you know, with all political stuff, like if you agree or disagree, that's one thing. But if we're talking about music, it's like you can interpret art however you want to interpret it. You know, does that make sense?
Totally, and I think a lot of times when I think about a band like that, I think about like a Tool or a Deftones or a Chevelle.
Yes.
Like there's a, like you're saying, there's a certain emotion, believability that is conveyed in their tone and the way that they express and deliver the song, and you know, it's very hard to listen to an artist like that, and even if you aren't in that emotional state or tied to it at all, that message is so deeply conveyed just through their music that, like you're saying, it's hard to not just be enveloped kind of by the, like you said, like the presence of the band or the presence of the song. And so I think 100%, and I think for me, like my second one with that was storytelling, which I think kind of works with believability, because it's not, and I'll tread lightly when I say this, it's not hard to write a song. No. It is hard to write a song that tells a story that people can understand. Absolutely. And so I think that's the other thing, you know, and when I think of storytelling, I also think about, you know, if I'm thinking about live music, I'm also thinking about the front person's ability to fill the gaps between songs during a set. I think that's a huge part of it, because, you know, for anybody here that's been to any kind of, you know, concert or anything like that, one of the things I think that always keeps the crowd or keeps the listener engaged is the front person's ability to fill the void or fill the gap within telling that story of the whole show. And so I think that with that comes a seniority or a maturity with understanding that, because again, music is about conversation. Yeah. And just like you were saying with System of the Down and things like that, like your ability to tell a story is so important, because being able to tell a story is what allows people to identify with what you're doing, or what you're trying to say, or the message you're putting across, which I think, if anything, like, you know, all artistry within writing, you know, can come all the way from you know, an author to a poet to a musician. And I think that's a huge part of being a frontman, is being able to, like you said, make that story be believable through the emotions that you're able to convey.
Absolutely, man. And I'm going to take that one step further with my next one.
Would you like compounding interest? Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, being believable is one thing on the track. Being emotive, you know, conveying the emotion, you know, over the speaker is one thing. It's one thing to do it when someone's sitting in their room and they have candles lit and everything like that. The other thing that I think really matters in a frontman is conveying whatever the message is live. And I think that those are two very different things, especially in this day and age. There's plenty of guys who I can think of a couple that I'm not going to name because I don't want to do that, but where they sound fantastic on the track. They and even especially I've seen this many times in artists that are not in rock or heavy metal, where they have some sort of radio hit, anything, you know, things like that, and then they go and do a live performance, or you see them on an awards show where they actually have to do it live, and you're like, ooh, man, like the sounds great on the radio, sounds great with auto-tune going, but when it comes to like getting the crowd moving, conveying that message in person, something's missing. So my second trait is stage presence. And this is just like being able to perform. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that'll bring me to my third one, but I heard it described really well on a documentary. Many of the fans of the show may have seen it. It's called The Story of Metal. It's a VH1 documentary. And in there, they interview Bruce Dickinson, who's the singer of Iron Maiden. And he talks a lot about his stage presence and why they had the giant Eddie and why he's running across the stage, all that stuff. He's wearing the giant spandex. And he's saying everybody who's in the stadium, and this was a huge inspiration to me as a stunt performer. We were always, I played Chitauri. I was the bad guys, and I played the Hulk and stuff when I did the live show. But one thing I really took away from Bruce Dickinson as I was getting into live performance was that he was saying every single person in this arena bought a ticket. They're all here to see you. So if you're Chitauri number 5, not only do you have to perform 100% because they paid to come see you, but second of all, you're not just performing to the people in the front row. You're performing to the people up at the top bleachers. You know what I'm saying? And his point was, I'm not only performing to the people right here that are getting the sweat on them, I'm doing these big, huge gestures. I'm not just holding the microphone and singing. I'm doing these big, huge, grand gestures so that the person at the very back feels like I'm singing to them. That separates good singers and frontmen from real performers.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that like you said, there's something that, if you look at some of the most iconic front people there's been, like, there's a reason why typically those very iconic people are also like the fan favorite of the group.
Yeah.
Because like exactly what you're saying is that they make you feel like, whether you're at the concert or you're at home listening to it, like they make you feel like you're a part of their journey, no matter where you're at, in that. And so I agree with that. And I always think about, the times that I've, been on tour or been playing shows or been to shows, a lot of times when I'm seeing bands for the first time, it's not even necessarily the bands that are the best musically that I remembered, but it's the ones that like made every single person in the room feel like they were a part of their moment and their journey. Because again, so much of, if you look at even the nerdy science of music and like psychology, like there's a huge part of music that is such a it's such a freeing and uplifting, even with sad songs, because we're able to identify with that, like we've said, with the other attributes. So I couldn't agree more. And like I said, some of the bands that have stood out to me the most were people that were able to do that, not just because of their music, but just because of exactly that ability to draw everybody in, regardless of where they were or what made them apart, which kind of leads really good into my last point, I guess, for me, because my last thing when I thought about, iconic front person, I thought about somebody who seemed tangible, like someone who I felt like was just a normal person, an average person doing above average things. And I think if you look at some of like, I think back to like the 80s and 90s, and like the Farm Aid concerts, right. That was in the Midwest, that was a huge thing. That was a huge thing where musicians were coming together to provide, relief for farmers and all these, and there's things, there's been, drives for AIDS. There's been, Woodstock, Ozfest, Warped Tour, all these kind of things. And I think that's the last thing is like, if I think about anybody that's ever played a main stage, like you've been able, if you're a fan of their music, you've probably followed them from grassroots to some degree all the way up to fame. And I think that it's the bands, like I for some reason I always think of like Sum 41. I remember when I first started listening to Sum 41, they were barely on VH1, they were barely on MTV, but like I was listening to them, you know, anywhere I could find them, and then like slowly they started to get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
But they always still felt like the Sum 41 that I began listening to, and that was something that kept me loyal to them, because it's like as if like I was proud to be a fan from day one.
What you're always playing me. Know you left the every have an animosity. You decided to be, you don't make it what you be. You can find you when you have that see. Don't point your finger at me. It's all your destiny. You believe it's all king, so quick to point the blame. And now tables have turned. Shut up!
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the most iconic front people, they have that ability to like make you a fan from the moment you hear them. And or even like a Justin Bieber, like you know, we think about like the little kid Justin Bieber, who, you know, was very specific to a group, but now like you've watched him mature into the music that he's putting out, and like everybody, you know, can get involved with his music, but also to just the way that he conducts himself in real life. Like he's real, he's honest. He makes you feel that yes, he is Justin Bieber, but at the end of the day, he still seems like a normal person that you would probably bump into on the street. And
Self-aware, very self-aware, it seems like.
Yeah, exactly. Very self-aware and very grounded in the fact that they understand that they're still a human, and they don't, you know, they don't put themselves, you know, you don't see Justin Bieber kind of making himself out to be like as like a Kanye West who just seems untouchable.
Yeah, one of the best things I ever heard was actually Corey Taylor from Slipknot talking about Justin Bieber, and he's like, look, say what you want about his music and stuff. He's like, if you've worked in the entertainment industry, there's a certain way that you conduct yourself, and especially if you're in a position like Justin where you're kind of the star, how you treat your crew and the people around you really, really makes a difference. And, you know, obviously having done that myself, like, there's a lot of guys that I worked with that treated the crew like shit, you know, like, and I just don't have respect for people like that. And from what Corey had to say, he works his ass off. He's very busy. He's always slammed and stuff, but he always finds time to take care of his crew, treats those guys like they're royalty and stuff. So
yeah,
you know, I nothing but respect for guys like that. So,
and I think a really good band in the metal genre that's done a good job of that and sharing a lot of their major ups and downs was a band like As I Lay Dying. You know, they've almost from like the inception point of YouTube, like they've always put out a tour series. They've always put out a behind the scenes. Obviously, Tim Lambesis went through what he went through in his life, but even to watch their documentary series of him coming back to the band and all the band members sharing what that journey was for them. As I Lay Dying's music, it's not a huge wow factor for me, but the honesty and the genuine spirit in which they put themselves out there and conduct themselves, I think to me makes him and them, you know, a front person that I would be drawn to because of like you're saying, that honesty and
their openness.
Their openness, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure, man. So here's the only thing that I think I'm going to kind of take a left turn from the path that you were going down. And this is kind of my initial and final thing that I think makes a great frontman, and that's simply talent. You know, as much, you know, we've talked in the past about, you know, I'm kind of a singer snob, and one of the reasons for that is growing up, you know, some of the earliest music I listened to was like Michael Jackson and Mariah Carey and things like that. I was a fan of exceptional vocals, and especially, you know, and I'm sure you can relate to this, you know, we're coaches, you know, we're coaches for athletes and they do incredible things. So when we see somebody who has exceptional natural talent, you can appreciate it. You know what I'm saying? Like having, you know, being an athlete also, like, and we've competed at the professional level, both of us, it's like there's a certain amount of training that people, like, let's use someone like myself. There's a certain amount of training I can do, but I'm limited by my natural God-given ability. And so when you do hear someone that's touched by God, it really stands out. It's really remarkable. And especially if they embody some of the other traits that we've just talked about, it really becomes something special, you know? So, you know, a couple people that come to mind just from a talent standpoint, I would say someone like, I mean, first of all, Ronnie James Dio would be one. Someone like Rob Halford from Judas Priest, you know, like other bands of that era could not sound like Rob Halford. Incredible. He still is. I think you mentioned a couple others like Chester Bennington, Matt Shadows, right? Like from Avenged Sevenfold. He's one of those guys where I'm just like, he has a fantastic voice, you know? One that I was thinking about that, you know, I don't know if he gets enough credit in the metal world, but DEVIN TOWNSEND. There's a video that kind of went viral where he was just kind of playing a live set and in one take performed this song called Kingdom, and it's just really remarkable how good he is at singing. And a lot of that is his training, and you know, he has practiced this for years and years and years and honed his craft, but the second half of it is he's just blessed.
something, especially in I would say the metal community, that is kind of like it gets compared a lot band to band, frontman to frontman. Like there's a very competitive spirit within the heavy genres of music.
Yep.
And I think that for a lot of people, like I even think of like one of your favorite bands, Periphery. Like, since the beginning of them becoming popular, you've never seen them stop perfecting their craft, and you've never seen them, shy away from always being very open about trying to improve. I even think about, I'm a really big Every Time I Die fan, and I remember years ago, a lady named Melissa Cross came onto the scene, and she had a thing called the Zen of Screaming. And two of the first people that were big in her documentary were the Buckley brothers from Every Time I Die. And, and they one of the questions that that they were asked is like, okay, you're already very talented as a band, as a group. Like, why was it important for you at this stage in your career to seek out this training? And I remember, I think it was Jeff Buckley that said it. I remember one of the things he said, he's like, well, look at any other pursuit or sport. He's like, do you see any other professional sport not practice or not put tons of time and effort into being the best and continuing to be the best at what they do? He's like, that it's just a stigma in, because I think in the music industry especially, there's a little bit of a stigma of either you have the natural talent or you don't, and that it's not too often you can see somebody come from average or slightly above average talent and then work and become great. But when it does happen, that work ethic and that transition is very noticeable. And I think that when I, as a fan, look at somebody, when I saw that about Every Time I Die, it made me love the band and that much more, because it's like, oh, as much care as I take to buy their music, listen to their music, support them, they're also putting that care back into making sure that every time they step on stage, it's the best performance that they can have. And I think that, like, I think of a band like A Day to Remember. Like, just, it seems like even when Jeremy as their frontman, like, even when they took chances on their genre and their style a little bit, like, you always saw that guy warming up. You always saw him, trying to be a better version of himself, whether it came to singing or screaming. So yeah, I 100% agree. I think that talent is something that's obviously very coveted within, the music industry, but also too, Eddie Van Halen is a perfect example. Any guitar tech would tell you that Eddie Van Halen played the shittiest Chevelle guitar ever, but Eddie was so good that he made that instrument sound, so iconic. And so I couldn't agree with that point more.
Yeah, and the thing is too, and I wonder culturally what's changing, because it seems like rock, metal, punk, other heavy genres, you can include hip hop too, seems like the pursuit of exceptionalism or excellence in the craft of what they're doing. I don't want to say that's only done in those genres, but it seems like what is currently, I don't know, mainstream, widespread music doesn't focus on that as much, or maybe doesn't care as much. And the only reason I say that is because think about how many amazing singers have been on The Voice. Think about how many amazing singers are on YouTube doing covers and stuff, and they're incredible. And in the past, someone would have discovered those voices and been like, dude, we got to cut an album. We're going to sign you and all that stuff. Now it's like, ooh, I don't know if I can make money with a voice like that. It's like, it's incredible, but if you don't have like style and like this, which I understand is important. I mean, look at Madonna. I mean, she made a whole career out of it, but, yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that's going away?
I think that's a good point, because like if I'm thinking about even The Voice in general, like sometimes you have individuals on that show who maybe specifically just their voice isn't the most amazing, but their confidence in being able to show the emotion, be believable, tell the story, get better at it. Like, those are typically the people that you see go the farthest. And I think that as much as music is something that obviously is about the audio, there's a part we can't neglect about the way that somebody just looks and how those two things match together. And so I think we talked about this on the second or third episode, but we talked about how, you know, music and the fashion industry, you know, kind of at different points in time ebb and flow amongst each other. And so I think that what we're seeing now is we're in another time period where music isn't just about what you're able to do as a front person. It's also about the way you're able to be fashionable and desirable in that way. So yeah, I don't know if I have a direct answer on what I think is going to be the future. I just know that I feel like we're back to this really cool time in all genres of music where there's so many grassroots independent artists that are coming and almost kind of you know, making waves with, you know, normal chart topping, you know, industry created groups or individuals. So I think that we're moving back towards a time where talent is going to start to be a little bit more important again than just like the way you look and the way you're able to be packaged, because I mean, social media is a big part of that now too.
Yeah,
like,
and I think now that we've seen that everybody can broadcast their talent, you're going to see the things that really actually stand out is real talent, really exceptional things, you know?
Right. And I think that, again, like the whole point of this episode was to say that it isn't these singular things that make a great front person or an iconic individual. It's the culmination or the combination of different things together. Because I think the one point that I kind of wanted to end on with this is that even though a lot of the times the front person is the person remembered, there's also a huge amount, and this could maybe be like a honorable mention point, is that chemistry with your band.
Yeah.
You know, that's, you know, like you were saying, how you treat your crew, you know, your crew sometimes just being your band.
Yeah.
I think that's a big part too. You know, I think coming from the hardcore music industry and like really loving that, like I've been to hardcore shows where I've seen band members like get in fights on stage and stuff like that.
Yeah, totally.
You know, and so I think that another great thing is that chemistry, is that you have to be able to be someone that understands the chemistry of your group, and that also, because that chemistry also helps elevate you as a front person,
and it helps
well.
elevate your message. You know what I'm saying? Like
totally.
a good example of that, and we've talked about them in previous shows, is band AFI, especially when they were in their kind of hardcore punk days and stuff. And by the way, they haven't had a lineup change since in decades, I think. And I think the reason for that is they gel so well, they work so well together. But because they're all kind of buying into the same thing, it's not just Davey Havoc who's pushing this message forward or this vibe or whatever it is. They're all in. And so it just seems like the show is happening. You know, it's no longer about one guy. It's about the idea. You know?
Well, a perfect example is like, think about the shift of Blink-182 when Tom DeLonge left.
Yeah.
Like, they have another guy in there. He kind of looks and he kind of sounds like Tom DeLonge, but
he's from Alkaline Trio, right?
I believe so. I think he was the guitar player from there. But it's like, it still doesn't quite feel like Blink-182, you know, because there is a piece of chemistry that, you know, that does make that. And so, yeah, I think that, and I think that's something that's really noticeable about a band, it just in general, especially within any kind of genre that's like a heavy genre, like, because every member of the band plays such an integral part to the success of that I think that's what makes heavy genres of music especially very unique, in that the chemistry has to be there, starting a lot of times with the music and the front person.
Absolutely. All right, man. Well, dude, that was such a fun topic. I was really, really thrilled with that. But
yeah, that was really fun. I was curious as to kind of where we were gonna go, but that was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Before we jump off, first of all, what are you currently listening to?
That's hard. I've kind of, to be honest, I've been so busy this last week that I've been all over the map.
Me too.
I will say, you know, and I'm sure there are people that listen to this episode that are so steadfast in everything having to be always about metal and heavy genres. But one of the albums I've actually really enjoyed this year, or as of lately, is the new Miley Cyrus album. It's actually really good.
All right, guys. Well, it was fun doing the podcast while it lasted.
But other than that, I've actually been kind of kicking it back. It's funny that you brought up System of the Down. I've actually been listening to a lot of System of the Down and old Korn lately, which I never thought I would say. So that's kind of where I've been. I was listening to, some older Korn and some older System of the Down. Have kind of been on the rotation lately. But what about you?
No, I'm in the same boat, bro. Like, I've been super slammed, so I really haven't had a ton of time to listen to music. So I'll just like pop on like Logic's new album, like as I'm walking around my house. It's called No Pressure. Mm-hmm. It's pretty good. I've been listening to that. I'm a big Logic fan, so yeah, digging his new stuff. It's not, some of it doesn't slap as much as his previous things, but it's cool. Sure. Like, it's a nice little change of pace. But yeah, man. All right, homework.
Go ahead.
Yeah, all right. So I'll go ahead and start with some homework. The thing that I wanted to have you listen to was, and I was thinking about like, okay, what's an album that he probably hasn't listened to that I used to listen to a lot, and I haven't listened to it in a long time. So maybe I think it's good because of my nostalgia for it, but I'd want to get kind of an outside opinion. But it's an album I used to listen to all the time. It's called Terminate Damnation by a band called Becoming the Archetype.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so this is their first full-length release from what I understand. It was released on Solid State Records. I don't know if they're a band anymore, but yeah, okay. So basically, from what I understand, they're a Christian band, and they play like metalcore, a little bit of death metal elements in there. And I'm trying to think like, okay, these songs, these melodies, these guitar licks got stuck in my head a lot back in the day. Really, really was into it at the time. And it's one of those things where it's like a movie that you used to love, then you go back and watch it and you're like, I'm not sure if this is as good as I remember. So I need for you to check it out for me.
Remember what it's like when you watch a movie and you're like, oh man, I remember when this CGI was like the best, and now
dude, totally, yeah.
What is happening? I haven't listened to them in a really, really long time, so I'm actually really excited about this.
Sweet.
I've been going back and forth yesterday and this morning about what I wanted to give you for homework this week because I had some good choices, and I think I'm going to change my choice just based off of what you gave me. So, my album for you for homework this week, I think, and I'm trying to decide which album from this artist I want to give you. I think I'm going to go, the name of the album is called Internal Atomics. It's by a band called Stray from the Path.
I know who that is.
Yeah, so I'm a huge, so when I give you Straight from the Path, I'm giving you one of my top 5 bands of all time.
Okay.
The reason I wanted to give you this album is because I thought based off the topic that we had for this episode, I feel like specifically he as a front person, kind of blends a lot of what we talked about today, like the emotion, the story, a lot of his music and his lyrics are very politically driven.
Yep.
And then too, just I mean, I've probably seen Stray from the Path at least 6 times live, and every single time I see them, I've never been to a show where he just doesn't bring the energy. It's always there. And
for
so
sure.
I thought,
you know what's crazy is when we I can't remember if it was their first album or whatever. I think it was produced by Misha from Periphery. That's how I heard of him. But
I think that's their Villains album.
Yeah, they released a track and a video for Damien, and that was the first time I ever heard him. And that kind of also ties into a couple of things we talked about. Number one, the believability, right? You can tell he means what he's saying and he believes it. And then the second part of it too was when I first heard him as a vocalist, I was like, holy shit, dude, nobody sounds like this guy. Very naturally talented, So obviously, I'm sure he practices the technique of screaming and everything like that, but you got to have a bass. And he has an exceptional voice for sure. So, excited for this one.
Yeah, it'll be a really good one. And I think too, like a lot of the other people that we've talked about, there's also once you hear his voice and his vocals, it's almost impossible to not distinguish him every time he's featured on a different artist track or something like that. So yeah, so I'm excited for you to listen to that, and I'm also excited to go back and listen to Becoming the Archetype.
All right, brother. Well, that should wrap it up for today's episode. We want to thank all you guys for listening. If you guys want to support the show, please just share it with a friend. Like, share, subscribe on this video. We're popping this on the YouTube. This is the first podcast video that we're putting on YouTube. So please like, share, subscribe. We're going to have our Patreon going. There's only one option, and all you can do is give us $2 million. I think we discussed this previously.
I think it was 2.5 is what I rounded us up to.
Yeah, 2.5. That way we can quit our jobs and do this full time. Yeah. And so, yeah, go ahead and jump on that. And, yeah, that'll be that. Yeah. How do you want to take us out of here, man? We got to figure out like a thing now visually, because we have the screeching hellfire at the end of every episode. But now I'm going to have to add some like fake flames or something like that to kind of bring us out of here.
I think, if we go with like kind of the theme of 2020, which has bled into 2021, I think a very apocalyptic, world-ending type scenario where maybe just this, like this message will self-destruct within 10 seconds.
Oh, yeah, that's perfect, dude. Mm-hmm. Oh, my gosh. Okay. So, yeah, that's perfect. I'll get a countdown going. It'll be sweet. And then things will explode, and we'll be done with the show.
Yeah, I mean, that's what could be more metal than that.